So I will start today's class. Basically, I'll be talking about types of classification, systems of classification, essentially. So throughout history, classification can be broadly divided into three parts, three time periods. In former times, it was artificial type of classification. Then, majorly in between, it was the natural system of classification. And currently, we are using phylogenetic system of classification. So, views of different taxonomists, they vary even from botany to zoology, from taxonomists to taxonomists, they vary, keep on varying. They have different opinions. Some consider phylogenetic classification as part of natural classification itself. Some actually consider natural classification to be again divided into some many subsections. So there are opinions among botanists and zoologists who are the natural classifiers. But eventually, since in your syllabus you have to study these three, natural, artificial, and phylogenetic classification. So we will talk about classification from this perspective. Okay. So the first thing which you have seen that classification it means grouping organisms, grouping similar organisms, grouping similar organisms on the basis of trait. And dissimilar grouping dissimilar organisms on the basis of trait in different groups. Okay. So this essentially is classification, what we mean by classification. Now, classification with the modern systems, what you have studied, what you have to study is the seven kingdom classification. And you study the seven classification rank. And this is also known as taxonomic hierarchy. Yes. So you have on the top domain. Okay, on the top, red, K সবথেকে বেশি, K সবথেকে কম, তারপর domain classification. Domain, below domain comes kingdom, seven system classification. Then below kingdom comes phylum. Below phylum comes class. Below class comes order. Below order comes family. Below family comes genus. Below genus comes species. So each of them, each Each of them is known as a taxon. Taxon. Each one is a taxon. Okay. Each one of them is called as step is known as a taxon. And they are on the basis of rank they are kept. So this hierarchy, also you can call it as rank. On the top is domain. Domain includes everything, most of them. It is highly inclusive. That means it includes many species, many families, many orders together. So in that way, domain is most inclusive and least inclusive is your species. Also, you can go further below as subspecies and all these things as it requires, but domain is most inclusive and species is least inclusive. So, as per classifications, these essentially were introduced by botanists. So, the types of classification you can actually group them into the first one is the artificial system of classification. System of classification. Then you have the natural system of classification. And you have the phylogenetic classification. So this artificial system of classification, as per botanists, it goes from 300 BC to 1738, 1735 AD. Natural system of classification, this it goes from 1600 AD to 1883 AD. And phylogenetic classification is from 1883 to present day. So this is as per botanists. So they take into account works of Bentham and Hooker much more seriously than that of Unsuspected or Meyer or anybody of them. They take the work of Bentham and Hooker, but Bentham and Hooker were great. But let us keep the classification as per botanists because this is much more similar. Okay. And now, the artificial system, it is the oldest approach of classification. This is the oldest approach of classification. This is the oldest approach. See, as you can see from the table. So what it is, what it does, it uses arbitrary characters. They use arbitrary characters, artificial system of classification. Arbitrary character means just very superficial characters. Very superficial characters. For example, where on the basis of whether a bird lives in the air and flies, whether it lives on the land, whether it lives underwater, you can divide the animal kingdom into flying, land, territorial, and aquatic. This kind of classification. So, as per this classification, aerial, you can have butterflies and birds placed in one group. Okay. Terrestrial, you can have cockroach and elephant in one group. And aquatic, you have dolphins and fishes in one group. So this type of classification is very simple, no complexity, but at the same time, as the name says, it's very artificial and unreliable. Maybe it is very simple, but artificial and unreliable. It is very simple but artificial and unreliable. You can keeping birds and bees together. That is not a right way of classifying organisms, right? So basically, Vedas followed this around 200 BC. Vedas followed this type of classification. And then you had lots of people like Linnaeus in 1757. For 1758, I think. Written wrong over here. Then Linnaeus is also considered in under natural classification also. Person. You have people like Theophrastus, Greek, who were proponents of this theory. Now let us, instead of going to the history, let us move back to the natural system of classification. So, as per botanists, this system was introduced by John Bowen. John spelling is John. Bowen. John Bowen. A is silent. In 1623, botanist. But zoologists consider Linnaeus to be a proponent of the natural system of classification. Now, natural classification is much more inclusive and much more reliable. More inclusive means it takes in more characters, takes into account more characters. Artificial is just one artificial character, it will divide whole animal or plant kingdom. More inclusive, that means it includes more characters. Includes more characters for consideration. includes more characters for consideration. Okay. So what are the characters normally you take? You take into account morphological, you take into account anatomical, you take into account physiological or biological, physiology, biochemistry, and you take into account phylogenetics and genetics, you take into account molecular biology, you take into account behavior or ecology, behavior or ecology you take into account. You take into account ecology and as per many zoologists, you also take into account evolution and phylogeny. So now there is what is this phylogenetic classification? So some authors, some taxonomists, or most of them, many of them, especially the zoologists, they consider phylogenetic classification as part of natural classification. They consider phylogenetic classification as part of natural classification. But at the same time, some of these classifications which you see over here, you can break them up. But as it's given in your syllabus, we have to study in three separate topics we are talking. So, morphological character means from appearance, from outside appearance, anatomy means you cut it open, physiology means you see how their systems like digestive, reproductive, excretory, all these systems work. Then you look into the cytogenetics, how many number of chromosomes you count, differ molecular biology. In molecular biology nowadays, what is used is 5S ribosomal DNA, which makes 5S ribosomal RNA. So the sequence of this particular DNA, 5S, it is used for evolutionary classification. Yeah. Nowadays, this is the only criteria taken. I have talked about phylogenetics, how you use characters from A to make B, C. The previous class, if you have not attended it, look at the video, you will understand. So, basically, this particular phylogeny is done. So, this is basically you are also using phylogenetic classification and under natural classification. So, you also have under natural classification statistics. That is evolutionary or phylogenetic classification on the basis of similarity of characters and dissimilarity you make them into two different groups or same groups. Or you have phenotypes, where you numerically count the number of characters similar, number of characters dissimilar, and you have a mathematical score to say for your decisions. So nowadays, statistics is more popular. The popularity of mathematics has gone down, but still you have to study about it. And finally, you have the phylogenetic classification. What is this type of classification? Classification in terms of phylogeny. Okay, classification in terms of phylogeny. No longer in this natural system, you use the seven system classification. Kingdom, domain, kingdom, phylum, class, you use it. Here you don't use it. Here rather, you talk in terms of from species A. For example, if bifurcates, here one character comes. Addition, a plus, minus, a second character. One or many characters. A difference takes place. A becomes B. Other characters similar. Or to another plus minus character, gain or loss of character. You have C. A B4 gives rise to D. B2 E. C may give rise to F. G. A. I. So, as per this rule, this line is an evolutionary species. You can say in this classification that E and D are more closer than E and H. So E and D they are in the same place. A has got a different line. So as per this is another evolutionary species. Or we talk in terms of clade. For example, you can divide animals first into polyploids, oligoploids, and Phylogenetic. Former times in the final material, class Polypita, class Oligopita, class Phylogenetic. As per modern phylogenetic classification, it has been seen that animals have branches three types in trifurcated in three lines. One polypid, one oligopid, we don't talk about class phylum. And phylogenetic classification also takes account of fossil records. Even natural, this also takes into account of fossil records. But this fossil record is very important. So nowadays, the latest edition of Rupert Barnes Fox, Professor R.D. Barnes expired several years ago, 20 years almost over. But Fox and Rupert, they sort of continuing his book and improving it. They have introduced into his book the phylogenetic system of classification. But he was not very confident. He was not very confident in totally they were actually Fox and Rupert, they were not very confident in actually removing the natural system of classification totally. So they also took the natural names and they used the classical classification. So the book which you have in our library here, it's the same. That's the latest edition. In earlier edition books, 1992, I have studied all the editions of these books. So you had a different system of classification. It was totally natural. Even in your syllabus, the classification scheme, classify phylum and Annelida with characters, this classification scheme, this is as per the natural system of classification, and you must follow according to Professor R.D. Barnes, 1994, 6th edition. The 7th edition is different. R.D. Barnes has expired many days back. Okay, this is the end of the class. Do you people have got any questions? नहीं हाँ बोलो Very good. আর্টিফিশিয়ালে ডোমেন ফোমেন ইউজ করো না, শুধু ন্যাচারাল। Super kingdom, super class, subclass, they are used addition. It's a natural system of classification. They are used to additionally classify them, sub-classify. But the basic are these seven. এবারে you can have subspecies, below subspecies, you can go to race, huh? You can come over here. But the subgenus, huh? Yes, you have suborder. That those are you want to further classify that particular taxon. So you can use that as per the International Council of Zoological Nomenclature, ICZN, by principle of binomial nomenclature. You can use it. That's a very good question. Glad you asked, because I forgot to mention about subclass and all these things. Thank you very much. Any more questions? আচ্ছা, আরো কিছু ঠিক আছে তাহলে।